In this case, they have chosen pro-lifers, particularly elderly pro-lifers like Paulette Harlow, to bring the full brunt of the law against, using the FACE Act to throw them in jail. And unfortunately, Paulette is not the first person that this has happened to. We've talked about others on the show. We actually had a friend of Lauren Handy, who's a young woman who's been thrown into jail for her work, Kristen Turner, talk about Lauren and her beautiful work to try to save lives and try to protect women and try to protect children. But there are now several different pro-lifers in federal prison after being found guilty of committing felonies violating the FACE Act. So I talked about this in previous episodes, but what I want to say here is this. The reality is there are protests. The American tradition of protest is one that has a long history, right? And protest is essential to fighting causes and fighting for, especially against injustices. Abortion's legal in this country. Killing babies is legal in this country. It should not be legal. This is the greatest human rights abuse we are seeing in any nation, in any part of the world, is killing babies before they're born and they have a chance to even protect themselves, right? It's happening thousands of times a day, almost 1 million times, or depending on the year, over 1 million times a year. Horrific, right? We should have fierce, of course, peaceful, but passionate protest against this. That's what these people have chosen to do, like Paulette Harlow, in going into abortion clinics and peacefully saying, I'm not going to leave until you stop your operations today. Now, pro-Palestine protests today, BLM protests, many of these protesters are very disruptive. They're disrupting the normal course of activity of the school institution or maybe the police department that they're protesting, and they're disrupting the normal course of activity happening. That's the job of the protester in order to create change, in order to force a conversation, in order to get their cause in front of people's eyes. And that's what these pro-lifers did. What was their problem, though? They chose an abortion clinic as their site of protest. They didn't choose a police department. They didn't choose Yale University. They chose an abortion clinic. And the Department of Justice is not going after, BLM protesters. They're not going after pro-Palestine protesters. What they're throwing their weight against is pro-life protesters. This is not just a misdemeanor. They're calling it a felony. This is not just a slap on the wrist or do some community service. This is, I'm going to throw you in federal prison, right? I'm saying all of this because I think it's important to make these distinctions, to show these distinctions, that this is another form of protest. Yes, there are laws against going into an abortion clinic and blocking access, but there's also laws against setting fire around a police department or laws against blocking access at a university for Jewish students to walk through on a certain part of campus. Are we holding people to the same standard and holding them accountable in the same way with other causes as we are with the pro-life cause? And the brutal truth is this: no, the Department of Justice is weaponizing the law against pro-lifers because they do not like pro-lifers and because they want to protect abortionists. That is the reality. And anyone telling you otherwise is telling you something and not telling you the truth. The reality is it is weaponized against pro-lifers. That is the problem here. The biggest problem is abortion to begin with. And I want to applaud those that are willing to protest and put even their freedom at risk in order to escalate this issue in front of other people and get other people to pay attention and to save some lives. And they do it peacefully, of course, always peacefully. And that's what they've done. But this is unjust, the way that the Department of Justice has been targeting these pro-lifers. So what can you do? Spread awareness is one key thing that you can do. Make sure that people know what is happening. There are different organizations that are representing these people in court, like the Thomas More Society, to protect them legally. And so certainly support those organizations. We continue to report on it over at Live Action. You can continue to partner with Live Action, but people need to know about this unjust persecution of pro-lifers, and we need to speak out against it.